JG said at the end of the press conference yesterday about getting the ball more to the playmakers, and just what are the thoughts right now on including Marvin more consistently through the game, including Trey more consistently through the game?
Always something that's going to be at the forefront of our mind. I think we're operating at a high level when those guys are impacting the game and touching the football, so we want to do that early. We want to do it often. I don't think that's ever going to change.
There was only one play after the first quarter where Marv was targeted, maybe two. How do you kind of explain that happening, if that is a focus for the offense?
A number of different things. Certain things they did in coverage, certain ways the game came up from a scheme standpoint, but I got to get him the ball. That's certainly on my mind.
Do you feel like there were enough plays where he was the primary read that were designed for him?
I felt that way during the game. Going back and looking at it, I think there's maybe a couple things I could have done differently here and there, and you're always going to feel that way when you come out of a game. But, he had 5 for, I think, 98 yards and almost a touchdown. So I feel like he had an impact on the game. I, wanted to get him the ball more there towards the end and needed to.
When he gets involved early like he did Sunday, what do you notice? Like, how do you notice the defense react to that kind of going forward, like after all that happened?
I think it's different every week. In that game, they kind of rearranged how they were getting lined up on defense a little bit in the defensive backfield, some of the coverage they played, little things like that. I think you're always going to feel that when a guy gets rolling early in the game.
He was outside more Sunday than he had been in the past. Was that intentional, and if so, why?
Each week, we like to move him around the formation. Sometimes it's in the slot, sometimes it's in motion, sometimes we put him outside the numbers, depending on matchup, coverages, so many different things go into that.
Drew, after the third touchdown in the second quarter, you guys failed to score the last 2.5 quarters. How frustrating is that on your end in terms of trying to get the guys in the end zone or at least a field goal?
It's very frustrating. We thought we really had it rolling there early in the game. It was really good just to flow the offense in and out of the huddle. And, felt like for the most part, even in sometimes the second half, felt like we were really doing a good job of moving the football and, too many mistakes to score points, which ultimately falls on all of us.
What was the big difference in that beginning part compared to the rest of the game there, with the efficiency that we were seeing?
I'm always going to go back and look at some of the details and the execution of the play call and what we're doing and the finer points of it. Some penalties put us behind the sticks, certain details take care of the football, certain play calls in different situations. I think it's all of it.
What's the most efficient way to clean up penalties from what you can do during the week?
I think you emphasize it in the way that you practice and what you do during an individual and the way that you talk about the technique and hand placement and foot placement, depending on which penalties you're addressing and trying to fix. You point out those things around the league when they're done well, when they're done poorly, and try to get to a level where they're not happening on game day.
On the third and 8, JG said you guys didn't get the look you were looking for, but what went into the decision to run in the first place on third and 8 there?
Yeah, at the end of the day, anytime I make a call, I'm trying to go win the game. Whether I'm putting the ball in Kyler's hands, whether I'm putting the ball in the back's hands and trusting the O-line. I think just based on the situation where we were, the down and distance, I didn't love the call. Felt like I put our guys in a tough spot and not happy with that.
So I guess because JG said the same thing, but what went into the decision to go with a run in the first place there?
Again, looking at kind of where we hit the first drive, felt like we hit that obviously on the third down on the big run earlier in the quarter, and some of the things that they were doing to sell out to stop the run. Felt like we could try to split one there for a big one and catch them off guard a little bit, and it didn't work.
Does Kyler have an option to check out of that at the line of scrimmage in those situations?
There are times where he has checks. He did not have one there.
Why not?
Just the play that came in did not have a check on him.
What percentage of the plays does he not have a check on?
That would be very different from game to game.
All right. What goes into that? Like, how do you decide I imagine this is months ago. How do you decide in a specific play whether the quarterback is going to have a check on that play?
It could be a couple different things. Certain plays we only like into certain looks or certain fronts or certain coverages, so we want to give him an out because we know that there are some tougher looks. Other plays we feel like have answers to more looks or more looks. Other times there's motions and shifts on it where you don't have as much time to operate and can't get into different things. So I'd say there's a lot of different things that play into whether a play has a check or not.
His intentional grounding play right before halftime, and it was about 47 or something to go. What was that all about in terms of just the way he tossed that ball out? What happened there?
He would be able to answer a little better than me. I felt like he thought he was going to have something come open, so he was kind of holding on the ball, waiting for that window to hit, and it didn't quite hit the way he expected it, so he kind of got caught with the ball in his hands in the pocket. I think he was trying to get it to maybe the back or the tight end in the flat there and just couldn't get enough on it to get it in the area.
When you lose a game like this and you look back, like you say, and you see plays that you had that could have decided the game in your favor, how hard is it to flush it and start to focus on the next game?
I don't think it's extremely hard. That's the nature of losing in this league. I don't think anyone's undefeated anymore, so every team's had to go through it. That's the nature of the NFL. I think being able to be resilient and show up on Wednesday and ready to go, I think is a huge part of being a good team and being a good coach, and that's what we got to do.
did you evaluate Isaiah Adams moving over to left guard and Will Hernandez in his return?
Yeah, I thought those guys did a pretty good job from a communication standpoint. You know, there's always going to be things, as we talk about, that they want to clean up in terms of one-on-one technique, or whether it be certain things in combination blocks or in protection. But I thought for the most part, with some moving parts, I thought they handled it pretty well.
The communication between the guards and the tackles is something that we've spoken to plenty of the guys about. How difficult or different is it for Isaiah to be so close with Jonah on the right side of the line and then have to go over to the left and work closer with Paris?
I think that would be something they would speak to a little bit better than me, but just watching them do it, it's something I have a ton of faith in. I think those guys do a great job. They're all in the same meeting room. They're talking constantly and asking similar questions and hearing each other communicate. I think Justin and Chris Cook do a great job of making sure that those guys are on the same page.
After watching film, that snap where it was the turnover, were you able to figure out if it was miscommunication or timing, or kind of what went into the
Yeah,
decision?
miscommunication.
JG said there were 3 plays in the game where the snap mechanics were off. How do you explain that happening?
Yeah, people make mistakes. I think you see people false start when they forget the snap count. There are different people who are on different mechanics when we're using different cadences, which I think is extremely important and a benefit of being at home. You can use your voice on some of that stuff. So it's a level of detail that I got to get right.
He called it the details of coaching and said that it isn't good enough, and he put the blame on himself. Do you feel like the details of coaching have been good enough this year?
When stuff like that happens, I'm going to look to myself first and figure out how to fix it.
Why do you think that stuff has gotten worse this year?
I don't necessarily think it's gotten worse. I think it's hit us in some critical times, so that's what we got to address.
I think Jonathan said that he talked to you about keeping the ball in Kyler's hand in critical situations like that 3rd and 8, that drive. What does that look like going forward? Is that having him throw the ball? Is that having him run? Like, how does that look?
It can be both. I mean, there was a critical 3rd down. I don't know, it was the 2nd or 3rd drive, 3rd and 4. We put the ball in his hands on a quarterback run. We certainly threw the ball a number of times in 3rd down in critical situations or in the red zone, but want him to be able to affect the game at every opportunity, and that's always at the forefront of my mind. But at the same point, I don't want to become super predictable and every time that we're always going to drop back or do this or do that.
At that point in the game with his foot injury, how much did that affect kind of what you could do, what you couldn't do?
It didn't have a huge effect on it, but there's definitely things on the call sheet that you're saying, all right, we got to kind of back burner that, or we got to stay away from that. That's definitely part of when a guy's dealing with something like that.
Drew, we all know the call with Amari at the goal line. What was your reaction to that? Do you think he crossed the line with the ball, or what was your reaction to that whole thing?
Again, whether he did or didn't, that's what they call. Obviously he said it after the game. He made a mistake, and we can't do that in a critical situation. It's something that we're going to address and have addressed prior to that moment. It's unfortunate, and the thing, people make mistakes, and I've told them that. I think everybody in this room knows they've made a mistake. I've made a mistake. I joked, I said the only person I know that hasn't is my wife. So we got to live with that. Unfortunately, though, it came up in a critical situation, so that's what we have to address.
We've talked a lot about Marv over the weeks, over the different stuff he's dealt with and gone through. I'm curious, going to Indy where his dad was a big deal, like what's your thought process of him going back to Indy and if that could impact him?
I got to imagine it's going to be a pretty cool experience for him. He'll speak to that a lot better than I can. Kind of my version of that, I grew up a really big Buffalo Bills fan. And I remember my first time coaching and being on the field in that stadium was a pretty special moment. You kind of get chills. I mean, something he probably looked forward to his entire life, spent time on that field as a young kid. So I got to imagine it's going to mean a lot to him, and he's looking forward to it.
One more on the 3rd and 8 play at the end of the game. Was the clock a consideration there, even though it was almost a 2-minute warning?
Yeah, in a 4-minute situation, timeouts, clock, where we are on the field, what the score is, all of those things are going to go on in terms of what you want to call. You're looking to get the first down first and foremost, but there's a lot of other considerations that go into whether you run the ball, you throw the ball, what type of pass, what type of run, all those different things.
Does that change, though, when it's almost a 2-minute warning then?
It can. Again, depends where we are on the field, how many timeouts they have, the yard to gain. So many things can play into that.
How tough is it losing 3 in a row like you guys did on the last-second field goal when you feel like you're really close to getting over the hump on this thing, or how do you react to that?
Absolutely. I think you said it. I mean, it's not like you're getting blown out 3 weeks in a row. I mean, you're right there. It's 2 or 3 plays, and a lot of times that's true in a lot of one-score games. And I think if you look around the NFL, over half the games come down to the final possession or the final score. So that margin is really small, and I think because focusing on that is really important. I think the other thing, and I know JG said it, is got to focus on the facts. Right, so hey, we're 2-3. We got a chance to go 3-3 to Indianapolis. That's got to be the focus going into the week, and that's never going to change.
Without your top 2 running backs, and then you lose Tip for the season, who's one of your best blockers, calls himself a mauler. Are you able to continue using things in the playbook you already had in the run game? Or are you at the point where you're having to be a little more creative because of all the adversity you're facing right now?
A really good question. We're always going to have to change and tweak when guys go down to try to emphasize the skills that the guys are going on the field. So, hey, if we lost a mauler, or we lost a back that's good at this, or a back that's good at that, you need to adjust slightly, but the offensive line may still be the same, or a wide. All of those things, I think, go into the game plan to make sure, as we talk about, like, we want to make sure that the guys that are on the field are impacting the game and with the best of their ability.
There was one play in the third quarter where it looked like Tip and Trey McBride were blocking the same guy and then kind of releasing the same route. What happened on that play?
You're going to have to give me a little more context. I'm not trying. I'm dead serious.
It ended up being a check down to Carter. Kyler rolled right, but it was on the backside of the play. It looked like McBride and Ryman were both
and
blocking
Tip?
the same guy. It was right before Ryman got hurt, I believe.
Let me think about the play real quick. I think I know the one you're talking about. I think Trey might have had a chip shallow, and I think the DN stayed with him, and Tip's going into the flat the other direction. I think the ball probably came out before they got to go where they wanted to.
On that 3rd and 8, Jonathan said that he contemplated taking a timeout, but he didn't. He said he didn't love the call, you didn't love the call. What's the process there in deciding whether to take the timeout or not? And do you guys talk about it? Like, what's that whole process?
Sometimes those conversations are very in depth. A lot of times in the moment, I'm giving him quick piece of information, and he's got to manage clock time. He has so many other things to consider when taking a timeout or not taking a timeout. And again, a lot of not liking a call can be hindsight too. Like maybe at the time I was like, hey, when I called it, I felt pretty good about it. As we broke the huddle, I start to look at the look, or maybe evaluate what it looked like on the picture when I see the tablet after. I'm like, I don't think I gave him the best shot there. I could have done something different, and I need to be better.
Thanks, Coach.
You guys have the lead, but the Titans get the ball back, they go 71 yards with a 16-yard pass, a 38-yard pass. How tough is that to give up those kind of plays in that situation?
Yeah, explosives. I mean, at any point in the game, you never want to give them up. There's things we could do better there to negate those type of plays. But no matter when those happen, you never want to give them up. But you got to be able to rebound and respond, because it's the National Football League, and they're going to make their plays, and you got to be able to get to the sideline and say, what can we do better, and go out there and not let them happen again.
Were there things you could have done differently in that situation, just in terms of defensive calls or putting guys in different positions?
I mean, yeah, you can always look back at it and say, with that concept, maybe this would have been better. But I think overall, just, we got to, execute some of those explosives a little bit better, to be honest.
What do you tell a defense after a play like the rabbit interception turn touchdown? Like, you get the turnover, everybody's hustling.
No matter what you're saying on the sideline, what do I tell them?
I mean, or later, how do you?
Well, in terms of, looking at it the next day, this is why we talk about, the importance of motor, is because it leads to negating explosives and the ball. So we can always look at that as a critical eye of, what a crazy play, but are we running? We better be all 11 running to that ball. So if that happens, we're there, not the other team. In terms of in the game, you just got to be able to reset. And that's that play was, a little bit chaotic, but any play where, they end up making a play and we give something up, you got to be able to reset. It's a 60-minute ball game, so you got to go out and continue.
It's funny because you talk about motor, but it almost looked, after the ball came out, that guys were so anxious to get to the ball that it actually cost them. I mean, can you have too much motor?
No.
When you're talking about motor, though, is that in regards to fumble recovery, or when the ball's on the ground?
Yeah, until the whistle's blown, get around the ball. Whether you're going to go make a block for the guy who just intercepted, or the ball having to spit out, are we there to make that play?
So you're talking about some guys celebrating before the play is dead and stuff like that?
You just got to make sure all 11 are sprinting.
How difficult is it, when a team like the Titans offense gets going in the fourth quarter, like they were in that game Sunday? How do you stop that momentum or change that tide? It's kind of momentum's on the other side.
Yeah, we talk about momentum, in my opinion, is only a thing to the untrained mind. And it's not to say that we're perfect. We need continually train our minds. But if you're allowing a compounding effect of the past to influence the future, then you need to train your mind better. And that goes into resiliency, and being able to have a post-mistake response to where no matter what happened, how can I reset my focus in order to maximize my preparation going forward? So, if it's in the moment and you're trying to not allow it to happen, it's too late. That's something we continually talk about and work on, and you need to put yourself through situations where you're visualizing, setting the intention that a game is not going to be perfect. And when those plays happen or those things happen, what is my response? Where does my mind go? Where does my focus go? And we got to always, everybody, you got to always continually work on that, because it's hard. It's a lot easier said than done. But that's something that we work on and talk on a lot.
How tough is it when football's such an emotional game? I mean, you're dealing with that kind of emotion that goes into a game.
Yeah, I think it's everyone's going to have a different level of, emotion on game day. Some guys are high passion. Some guys are a little bit more stoic. But you got to be able to use it positively towards shifting your focus towards what is important in that moment, right? Whatever that next play is, that next drive, where's your focus at?
Josh, commonalities that you're seeing that you guys are not doing as well on these final game-winning drives as you are for 55 minutes leading up to that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of, starts with myself, with, the plan, and then how to call it. That's something I need to improve on. And then there's always things of how could we rush better? How could we cover better in those moments? So I think it's all of us, coaches, start with myself, players. But it's definitely something that we need to improve, right? We want to be able to go out there and close those games. So we're going to continue to work on it and critically look at it and say, how can we be better in those moments?
How do you work on that specifically?
Well, you practice it. Yeah, you practice it, and from my perspective, it's not as much of the practice on the field, but it is the rehearsal of the preparation. How do I want to call it in these situations? Putting yourself in those different situations. I think JG does a phenomenal job of having us coordinators meet together and go through a lot of situations from around the league. So I'm watching tape of, not just the upcoming opponent, but all these other 2-minute situations. Maybe it's 2-minute, 4-minute, all these, whatever he pulls, and how do we want to play it there? And you guys the more you critically look at those, the more in the moment you're able to problem solve and figure out what's best. So, I think JG does a really good job of helping me prepare for those moments, and I got to continue to get better.
Josh Sled was talking about how one of the things he enjoys about the defense is the ability to rush from all different angles and not just stay on one side of the line of scrimmage, because the left side of the line of scrimmage might be way different than the right side of the line of scrimmage. How do you find that balance, though, with trying to be unpredictable while still trying to say, all right, but you might be better at rushing from one side of the line?
Yeah, I think that just goes into how we have the defense set up in terms of adaptability, and on pass downs being able to present a lot of different looks, a lot of different people in different spots. Whether you're trying to rush the quarterback a certain way, whether you're trying to create a certain matchup, or you're trying to attack a certain protection. And it's a little bit of a matrix, I call it, because I'm greedy in that I want to be able to do all of that stuff, and then, hey, what's the best coverage for either, take away this guy or take away this route concept. So, that's like what I'm working on right now. It's you start to kind of piece things together, and you're definitely thinking about people like Josh. How do we get him in those positions? Because we know he can go out there and affect the game at a high level.
What sort of advantage is it? Because I know there have been a handful of times this year where he's had his hand in the dirt, kind of played that 3-tech spot, but he also has the ability to stand up. So what sort of advantage does that give you guys, knowing that you could use him in both situations?
it allows you to be more creative and be more flexible. It's not just sweaty. I feel like a lot of the OBs can get in there and rush inside, and I feel like a lot of our interior guys can flex out and play on the edge. So it's fun to have those tools.
Colts are a pretty balanced offense. When you're going up against a team like that, what is the first priority for a defense when they've got Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, but they've got Michael Pittman out wide, the rookie tight end who's been playing really well? How do you tackle that?
Yeah, first off, they're doing a phenomenal job. Obviously, I worked with Shane. I worked with the offensive coordinator, Jim Bob, Alex Tanny, the pass game coordinator, Tom Manning, tight end coach, is a stud. He's got those tight ends playing good. So the scheme is phenomenal. How Shane calls it is really difficult. And then you look at the roster and you say, well, what piece do you want to take away? So I think that's why they're really clicking on all cylinders right now, is because they're able to establish a run with Taylor, and Daniel is putting the ball where it needs to be, making the right decisions, getting it out of his hand fast. So a lot of different things that you have to be able to do to take that away. And it's not just going to be one drastic thing. You got to be able to defend all of that. And so there's going to be times where guys are in stressful downs and they got to win against some really good players,
In the NFC East, you would have coached against Daniel Jones at least a few times
Yep.
with New York. So to have this resurgence, what is he building off of? What maybe seems different now with the success he's finding in Indy?
I mean, he's always been a really good player in my mind. He's mobile. He's got arm talent. He's extremely smart. You see him getting them in and out of calls and plays and changing things. I think they're just doing a really good job of what he's good at and what he's comfortable with, of really operating in that realm while also featuring a lot of the playmakers they have. So, I mean, just give him credit. He's playing good. Like, he's always had it in him, and he's making it go right now.
The past 2 weeks, you faced two rookies in Horton and DK, who maybe don't have a huge target share, but both have that ability to stretch downfield. Alec Pierce, obviously a veteran with a very similar skill set. What challenges does that create as a defensive coordinator when a team has a wide receiver with that level of speed and verticality?
Yeah, A.D. Mitchell's got a lot of that as well, so they got a couple guys. I mean, you have to be able to, in the right coverages, win your leverage the right way. If you're on top, you got to be on top, which is going to open up some things underneath, right? If you're going to be able to close the post so that you can play more aggressive, you got to be able to mix those type of things. So I think as a play caller, you got to understand on when you're stressing your corners out at times, because they're going to have to win those stressful downs, but when can you give them relief and allow them to be able to go make some other plays, because those guys are definitely vertical threats. But that opens up, the rest of the pass game as well. So I think it goes into being multiple in terms of your pass defense.
Is there added stress when a team is scoring as many points as the Colts are? They're just rolling.
Not really. I'm excited for the challenge. I know the players are too.
You know the play call real well. He knows you. Is there a need to sort of break tendencies or change for the sake of change, just because there's that knowledge back and forth?
No, I've never really gone into a game saying, well, this is what I want to do, but I know this guy, so maybe I shouldn't do it. No, I think I can go about normal planning process. Yeah.
Solid season, and averaging over 50 yards a kick, I think, at this point. I know he was recently. Like, there's so many guys between the big legs on the field goals and the ever growing gross punting yards. Like, I'm just curious, like, are you ever surprised that over your years that it has increased on both those levels to, like, these kickers and punters being able to do this kind of stuff?
Surprised, no, because it's kind of been a gradual bump. I do remember, what year was it? 2007, I'm in San Fran, and nobody had ever netted 40 yards a punt, and Andy Lee was our punter at the time, and he did, but we had two horrific plays via Josh Cribbs at the end of the game. But he set the NFL record, and Leckler broke it 3 hours later. I think they both finished like 41-1 and 41-2. But, that was a while ago. But at the same time, like, nobody had done it up until that point. Now, there's so many guys over 40 net. The kicker thing, I mean, those guys have gotten better. And, I think I said this a couple weeks ago, the more people have success, not only your own guy, but other people, people are willing to try. And sometimes it's a down and distance factor. Sometimes it's a end of half or end of game factor. I think guys are just better than what they used to be, and I think as that position has become more specialized, the improvement shows in the stats.
Both Chad and Blake have kind of downplayed the impact of the new rules with the K-balls and said that that's kind of taking credit away from kickers and punters. How much do you think the rules are impacting it, and how much is it players getting better?
I'd echo what I just said. I think players are better, but to my understanding, the K-ball process, the ball that the officials get, nothing has changed there. They're still looking at it saying, is it whatever the PSI is or scuff, whatever. Like their interpretation of the ball, like that part of it hasn't changed. The part that's changed is the time limit in which you can prepare a ball. So, you know, here's the inside scoop on specialists, right? Like they are absolutely mad as heck in the past if ball one disappears, right? Like K-balls go, here's ball one, ball two, ball three, and it's in order because that's how they were prepared. And if you ever got to ball three during a game, like you're hoping for the best because, you know, they get broken out of the plastic, and those footballs are really slick, and the lacers are hard, and all of those types of things. And it's, you know, it's more similar to a quarterback ball at that point than a K-ball. But like those guys had, I don't know what the time parameters were, 30 minutes or something. I mean, there was a small window of time for them to be preparing. Now they don't have that window. They can do it on Tuesday at 4 o'clock and take that ball to the game. So, you know, I don't know that the K-ball preparation parameters that have changed has influenced anything as much as I would say that there's more footballs that are kind of like ball one now, like they're all ball one. So that's about as far as I can take it.
So you maybe see more of an impact like in the fourth quarter when maybe something would have happened in the past to the first, second K-ball?
Yeah, you can say that. I mean, like a guy has a good return, take this one to mom, right? Like the guy just jogs off the field. Or if there's a miss and it goes in the stands, like gets caught by the guy in the tunnel in Chicago. You know, like that stuff happens in games. But yeah, I mean, that would probably be a good hypothesis. Big word.
What happened on the one big kick return that they broke against you guys this week?
A couple things. I'm going to say this carefully. I didn't think we did a good enough job across the board getting off blocks. I didn't think we'd had enough players who defeated their blocks. There was one block in particular that was exceptional on their part, where one of our players ended up on the ground, kind of torqued. But, you know, anytime you have a big play, it's never just one thing that happens. I thought there were several guys who won on that play for us, but there's only one person that you really have to defeat, and that's the returner. And until you get that guy on the ground, you know, it's not going to be a successful play. I thought that, you know, there were D. Hall and Simi did a heck of a job effort-wise to get it. Chad slowed it down. Those two guys got the returner on the ground. Our defense came in, did a good job, forced a field goal, and, you know, you live to play another day. I thought the other three kickoffs that we had, we covered pretty well. But the one that gets out certainly sticks with you.
Jeff, have you ever seen so many crazy game-changing plays like you guys had Sunday in a game?
I've been around a minute. I'll just agree with you that there was a lot. I can't, off the top of my head, go back to a game with a lot of, because there was just a lot of impactful plays late in the game.
Thanks, Coach. Oh, Darren, you
I
got one?
was just going to say, as a coach, is it easier to deal with it when it's a crazy thing that turns out and not something where you're like, we made I mean, there's always mistakes even on the crazy stuff. Like on the rabbit one, I know that I'm sure you guys would like for them to fall on the ball a little bit quicker or more cleaner, but whatever. But when it's kind of that crazy stuff, is it easier to digest when a bad play ends up happening to you when it's crazy, when it's not like a direct, like, well, he just didn't have good technique on that coverage and he got beat over the top or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that sticks with you is winning or losing games, right? Like you either won or you lost a game. That's kind of short term. Everything else, you're always trying to evaluate, solve problems, improve so that the next game goes better in whatever area that it is. I don't know that anything makes losing feel any differently, regardless of how it happens. Lose 3-0 or 95-96. I mean, it's just it's a lot, and a lot of guys put in a lot of work into that stuff, and it's guys have talked about. After win, sometimes it's easier to correct some things or loss, but it's all the same, based on the result. So we just try and get everything corrected and be better next time.